Every time you speak Italian, the person you're talking to makes a quick decision. Do we keep going in Italian or switch to English? When I first moved to Italy, I realized something important. Italians don't just listen to what you say, they listen to how you say it. The rhythm, the little sounds, the everyday expressions, those are what tell them if you're a tourist trying out a few phrases or someone that they can connect with in Italian. And you don't need perfect Italian to sound more natural. Matteo and I will show you 6 simple tweaks to help you keep the conversation in Italian. 1. Try the Italian accent and, importantly, open your mouth. When it comes to sounding natural in Italian, accent actually matters more than little grammar mistakes. While it's completely normal and sometimes nice to have a little bit of a foreign accent, if yours is very different from the Italian one, people might assume that you don't really speak the language yet, and then they switch to English because they think that they're being helpful. But the good news is you can probably already do a bit of an Italian accent. If you imitate an Italian-speaking English, you'll usually pronounce something that sounds a bit Italian. That was terrible, but I am getting closer to the sounds and the rhythm. But for some reason, when we actually speak Italian, we hold back. Maybe because it feels unfamiliar or because we're worried about sounding silly. So my advice is, when you speak Italian, commit to the accent. You don't need to wave your hands around or play a stereotype like I just did, but just go for it a bit more. To get the Italian accent quickly, try to really enunciate your vowels. Vowels in Italiano are really full and clear. Just compare how in English we say restaurant. The vowels in the middle just disappear. In Italian we say ristorante.
Ristorante. Ristorante.
It might feel exaggerated at first, but Italians will actually find you easier to understand and they'll be more likely to keep speaking Italian with you. 2. Translate less and learn chunks instead. Another thing that can make your Italian sound unnatural is translating too literally. Often Italians just say things differently. For example, in English we say to have breakfast, and in Italian we say fare colazione, literally to do breakfast. There's no rule or logic to stress over, that's just how they say it. So to make your Italian sound natural, try to learn it in chunks. Those ready-made expressions that Italians actually say all the time. To do this, you need lots of contact with natural Italian. We suggest listening to dialogues with expressions that you might hear and use a lot in Italy. If you have a lower level, you can try listening to our podcast, Learn Italian with Joy of Languages, where you'll find slow, simple conversations in everyday situations. If you have a higher level, you can find some natural conversations on this YouTube channel, and you can also try listening to Italian TV shows and podcasts about everyday topics. Just listening will help you absorb a lot naturally, but I'd also suggest zooming in on any phrases that you like and that you think you might use a lot and making an effort to remember them. I think it works like this. You notice a useful phrase, you review it and test yourself on it a few times, for example, in your notebook. You try to use it a few times, and then it sticks in your memory. So you notice, review, use, then remember. If you'd like to work on sounding more Italian, so using natural expressions that encourage Italians to keep going with you instead of switching to English, that's exactly what we help you do in our online Italian school, with natural dialogues at your level, flashcards to help you remember the most important phrases, and speaking practice with our friendly teachers. To find out more, click the link in the description. 3. Phrases to keep the conversation in Italian. Sometimes when Italians switch to English, it's because they think that they're being helpful, or maybe they see a chance to practice their English. But when Italians actually know that you want to practice your Italian, they're often very helpful. All you need to do is let them know what you need by using these phrases.
Possiamo parlare in italiano? Sto imparando. Piano, per favore. Piano, per favore. Può ripetere? Può ripetere? Cos'è questo? Cos'è questo?
I love this last phrase. If you don't know how to say a word, then you can have fun with Italians by asking them. For example, you can point at something at a menu or at the market and ask, "Cos'è questo?" And they're often happy to explain it to you. But just remember, sometimes you can't control whether an Italian will insist on speaking in English with you or not. It still happens to me sometimes, even before I open my mouth. So I think it's really important not to take it personally or to let it knock your confidence. But the phrases that Matteo just shared will definitely give you a much better chance of keeping things in Italian. 4. Become a parrot. So one of the fastest ways to sound more natural in Italian is simply to copy. So not studying, not analysing, just copying the sounds and phrases that you hear. And if you think about it, babies don't ask, why is that verb conjugated in that way? They just hear and repeat things. And while grown-ups and babies certainly have different brains, I think that we adults can sometimes get too intellectual with languages, and we underestimate how useful it is to simply copy. So try and get into the parrot mindset a bit more and try to reproduce what you hear as closely as possible. And this is something that you can do casually all the time as you're studying or listening to dialogues in Italian. To get really good results, you can also try it in a more focused way by listening to Italian phrases, recording yourself, listening back and comparing them to the original. This method helps you focus on sounds and expressions, but also to copy the overall rhythm and feel of Italian, which I think is really important when it comes to sounding natural and helping Italians understand you. 5. Practice in your head before you speak. This is a really simple trick, but it works really well. So when you know that you're about to speak Italian, for example, if you're waiting to order or to pay, or you want to try some small talk with an Italian on the train, take a moment in your head to practice the first few phrases and maybe imagine how the other person might reply, so you can give your brain a chance to warm up. Preparing yourself for the first exchange really helps because once you've started well, it's often easier to get over the panic and then relax into things.
Speaking of which, try not to worry about mistakes. Remember that when Italians are listening to you, we're usually trying to understand you, not to judge. So relax and focus on getting your message across rather than saying everything perfectly. This will help you be less stiff and communicate more naturally for the rest of the conversation.
6. Take your mouth to the gym. So finally, there are a few sounds that can be quite hard to pronounce in Italian. For example, we've got the double consonants, which are longer in Italian, like in sete, thirst, which has a single shorter T, and sette, meaning 7, with a double T, which lasts for longer. You can almost imagine a little pause in between the two T's. Sette. We've got the rolled R as in birra, we've got the gli in famiglia, and the gn in lasagne. And I find that a lot of students give up too quickly on learning these sounds. They try a few times, but then it's difficult and then they give up. But Italian pronunciation is like going to the gym. You need to train little and often to get your mouth muscles used to the new sounds. If you focus on them and practice, you can move closer to the Italian pronunciation. And speaking of which, here's a video where you can learn how to pronounce Italian sounds and some shortcuts to help you learn them faster. So just remember that when it comes to speaking Italian naturally, be gentle with yourself. You don't need to sound like a native speaker. But with practice, you can probably get your Italian sounding much more natural, which will encourage Italians to keep the conversation going with you. Ciao!
Andare a vedere un cantiere.
No, ma vado adesso, Ma sai che oggi abbiamo un po' fretta?
Ah, sì?
Se vogliamo finire tutto, sì.
Vabbè.
Hai una corda che lo leggo.
Mi senti?
Sì.
C'ho un po' di fame. Mi ricordo più cosa
Piano
avevo.
per favore.